Hi everyone, thank you for your questions. I'm going to make another tutorial to answer some of them in preparation for your assignment for Monday. I'm not going to answer every single question that you asked. I'm going to answer those that I think are most relevant to the assignment and to what you will need to be able to do. So, first of all, there's a very simple question about this object here, M2F, and just about what it does. And so rather than just tell you what it does, I'm going to click on, I'm going to first unlock the patch, so Command E. I'm going to click on the arrow, go to Reference, and then you'll see in the description, converts a MIDI note number to a frequency. So we can show what this does in a sort of intuitive way by connecting the output of the K slider object and the output of the M2F object to two different integer boxes, and we can watch when I play different notes, I get one value here, which is the MIDI value, 60, and a frequency value there, which is 261. MIDI value of 52, frequency value of 164, and so on. And there's some frequency modulation going on, so that's why it doesn't sound quite as you might otherwise expect. So that's the M2F, or MIDI to frequency object, in a nutshell. Then there was a question about a load bang object. There isn't a load bang object anywhere in the patch or the test patch. There's a load mess object over here, and there's within this there's a bang object in the FM thing. So I'll talk about both of those briefly. This one I mentioned in one of the other tutorials. The load mess object is what allows you to store a melody. It's what allows you to read the melody that you've stored into your MTR object over here. So when we started, we recorded a melody, and then we wrote that melody to a file. When you close this patch and reopen it, you're starting fresh here with the MTR object, and so you need to read in the values that you stored from the melody test .pat. So that's the sequencer. So that's the load mess object in a nutshell, and what it does in this patch. Now, the bang object here does something interesting, does something useful. So talk about that for a second. But before I do, we've got a couple of different levels of nesting going on, and it's worth taking a second to talk about the different levels of nesting. So this is our main patch, and this is a subpatch within that main patch. So this is so the subpatch is an instance of encapsulation in Max, and what that means is essentially I had a bunch of different items. Let's say I had a few different integer boxes, and I selected them, and I pressed Command, Shift, and E, and now I've encapsulated those objects into a subpatch. And you know it's a subpatch because it says P, and then you can name the subpatch whatever you want. And what's unique about a subpatch, what distinguishes a subpatch from what's called an abstraction, is that it's stored within the patch itself. I'm pretty sure I talked about this in another tutorial that I made, but it is essentially connected and stored within the main patch. An abstraction is a patch that you've made. So I'll just make a bunch of, whoops. So here's my patch. Now if I save this patch, and I close it, and I type it here, I've now made an object which is an abstraction. I've made my own separate max object. It has no inlets or outlets because I didn't make any in that patch. And I can put it in this patch. I could make a new patch and put it over here because it's stored outside of the patch. Now, what's great about that is you can use it in any patch you want, whereas with a subpatch, you would have to go to the original patch where you stored it, copy it, and bring it into another patch. This, you can just type N and type out whatever the name of the file is, and then you've got your object. What's not as good about that in certain situations is, say you accidentally delete the original file, or you move it somewhere where Max can't find it, it's outside of the search path, you will no longer have access to that abstraction at all. So subpatch and abstraction are related. They're both levels, they're both ways of storing something, storing a patch within a patch. It's just whether they're native to the specific patch or whether they're stored in a separate patch. That's the main distinction. When we looked at the poly object before, the poly object takes an abstraction. So it takes one of these, essentially, here's the file that I made, my abstraction, and it's its own object. A poly object takes the my abstraction object as the name, as it's the first argument, and then it says how many of those do you want to make, how many of those abstractions objects do you want to have access to, and it's like they're each their own individual voice. So that's the difference between all of those different elements.